is CNN.
A city at a standstill, the burnt-out streets of Los Angeles still smoldering with tension.
Thousands of National Guard troops patrol the scorched battleground on standby in case they're needed to help quell the violence. U.S. troops.
From the streets of L.A. to the streets of Berlin, demonstrators in a violent May Day protest show their support for the racial unrest. The world watches. We'll talk with Germany's president. To our viewers around the world, good evening from London. I'm Hilary Bowker.
And good afternoon from CNN Center in Atlanta. I'm Frank Sesno. Well, the mood in Los Angeles is calmer today, and federal manpower is on the way to help restore order to the city's steaming streets. National Guard troops are out in force to stop the looting and arson, and some 4,000 U.S. troops are getting ready to join them if needed. They're part of a federal force President Bush is dispatching to help end the violence in the wake of the Rodney King verdict. The streets of Los Angeles are quieter today. Damage is estimated at least $200 million. But Los Angeles police say if the situation continues as it is now, they could turn the corner on the violence by this evening. Among the major developments this hour, President Bush plans to address the nation at 9 p.m. Eastern Time from the Oval Office. Mr. Bush is sending in 1,000 federal officers and mobilizing 2,500 Army troops and 1,500 Marines. At least 31 people are reported killed in the Los Angeles area since the violence broke out, and at least 8 fires continue to burn at this hour.
Violent protest at the verdict in the Rodney King case spread from Los Angeles to other American cities. San Francisco, Dallas, Seattle, Las Vegas, and Atlanta are among the cities that have felt as well as heard the anger. In Atlanta yesterday, a peaceful student march ended with a series of hit-and-run attacks by small groups. The mayor imposed an 11 to 5 a.m. curfew. CNN's Al Hinman reports on events today in 2 major American cities.
Outwardly calm and peaceful, marching once again to protest the verdict in the Los Angeles police trial. But the anger remains.
That's exactly what I'm saying, brother. I'm saying.
Student leaders on the campus of Atlanta's Morris Brown College calling for restraint.
We're not initiating any type of violence. We're not saying let's go out and start any violence. But we should feel free and we should feel justified that if we're attacked, we should be within our human rights to defend ourselves.
Trying to prevent further violence, Atlanta police remain in full force.
You space yourself out as far as you can, and they'll fill in on this end.
The police are under orders to keep student protesters on their campuses and out of downtown.
I think basically their intentions are good, but once they get off, they start feeding on it, and it becomes just an excuse to have a shopping spree, an excuse to burglarize, an excuse to rob people, and there is no excuse for that.
Security remains tight near the Georgia State Capitol, and the National Guard still on standby after a night of curfew and overall calm. But across Atlanta's downtown, graphic evidence of the day before's rampage. In New York, Mayor David Dinkins praised his city for its restraint following a morning meeting with community and religious leaders.
What can we do to channel the frustration and anger that many people feel here in our city, especially our young people, in a positive direction that would yield some good?
While Atlantans work to clean up their center city, Georgia Governor Zell Miller says he understands the anger, but says there are better ways to protest. Al Hinman, CNN, Atlanta.
President Bush, reacting to the disturbances, has scheduled a national address tonight from the Oval Office. CNN will carry it live beginning at 9 o'clock Eastern Time. Earlier today, Mr. Bush met with his advisors at the White House to discuss federal support for officials and residents in Los Angeles. And later, he sat down with a group of civil rights leaders who called on Mr. Bush to act quickly.
All of us are urging the president to ask the Attorney General to impanel a federal grand jury at the earliest possible moment to send a message. The troops send them one message, but impaneling a grand jury, a commitment to prosecute these police officers would send a message of hope, and I think would cool the temperature. And we urge the president to give immediate consideration to that.
The Rodney King thing happened more than 14 months ago. That videotape is played repeatedly. The African-American community has been very patient. We were waiting on the justice system. When it failed, The people that we propose to lead are asking, what now? You've asked us to wait on this system, and it has failed us miserably.
The civil rights leaders also say Mr. Bush must go beyond immediate remedies for the violence and address the underlying social problems, such as poverty and racism.
The violence in Los Angeles was making news around the world today, with many papers giving the story front-page attention. French President François Mitterrand also said, quote, "I know George Bush well. He's a generous man whose political theories are extremely conservative." He went on to say American society is conservative but economically liberal. What we're seeing now are some of the consequences. Mitterrand also said it's first and foremost a racial conflict, and racial conflict is always linked to social factors. It is, he said, at the same time a racial as well as social conflict. In South Korea, the government asked for more protection for the Korean community in Los Angeles, where relations between blacks and Koreans have been tense in the past. And at the Vatican, Pope John Paul II said he was deeply saddened by the riots and was praying for those who died.
Britain's Foreign Office is telling British citizens to exercise care if traveling to Los Angeles. Only a few British Airways flights to the city have been canceled. Many people say they have no intention of changing their travel plans.
Part where I'm flying to, I'll be fairly safe because I've got my aunt, my cousins, and they're well away from all the trouble, so just have to obey by the curfew rules and see how it goes from there.
I shouldn't have watched TV last night because I was watching it last night and saw them pulling people out of cars and things like that. So I'm just hoping things would have calmed down by the time I get there.
Newspapers around the world, as Hilary mentioned just a moment ago, gave extensive coverage to the verdict and the subsequent violence. Here's a sample of various editorials. The London Times says such incidents fuel the anger of those elsewhere in the world grown tired of globe-trotting American politicians lecturing them on democracy and human rights. The London Daily Mail says only a large assertion of federal authority could stop what it calls this fearsome slide into racial anarchy. To pose that awesome challenge in the lackluster context of presidential election is to make the heart sink. America itself is on trial. From Spain's El País, the riots have shown the terrible distance separating North Americans from the police forces which are supposed to protect them. Italy's La Repubblica. This is the price of judicial indifference and shame which protects violent white policemen and condemns the black victim. And the French daily Le Monde said in an editorial yesterday, since 1980, the Republican administration has reduced various social aid programs, especially health and food, provided to the poorest, who in the United States are often blacks.
There was violence in Germany as well today. In Berlin, leftist demonstrators clashed with neo-Nazis, adding a discordant note to May Day celebrations.
We'll have details, and we'll get a perspective from Germany's president, who is visiting the United States now.
After a hard day in the outback, dreams of the good life come easy. At Outback Steakhouse, we decided to bring these dreams to America. Well, most of them anyway. Outback Steakhouse. No rules, just right.
I was going over my bank statement, and I saw that my rates had never been so low. This is all I'm earning?
Common sense says you can't always depend on yesterday's solutions.
You've got to be kidding.
Fidelity Investments, America's largest mutual fund company, has the income opportunities you may want.
So we're talking investments.
The interest rates I used to get, they're just not there anymore.
Wondering how safe this one or that one is.
But now you want something solid. Who knows? There's got to be something out there.
Sometimes the answer's a lot closer than you think.
Fidelity offers you high current yields with the credit safety of U.S. government securities, higher than you may be earning in the bank, with no sales charge. That's why over 2 million people trust Fidelity to help their money earn more. So call Fidelity now for this free booklet, a common sense guide to investing for income. You'll also receive everything you need to start. Call Fidelity now at 1-800-237-4400. Fidelity Investments. Common sense. Uncommon results.
At the Ashby Inn, the secret of our chicken rice recipe is in the rich taste of our chicken stock.
Country Inn rice dishes made with hearty country ingredients and Uncle Ben's rice. Taste the country in Uncle Ben's Country Inn. Rice dishes inspired by the finest inns.
The sporting life, there's nothing quite like it. I'm Jim Huber. Join me monthly for a look at some of those whose stories may not make the headlines, but whose dedication to the pursuit of excellence makes all the difference in the world.
The Sporting Life begins Saturday morning on CNN.
Rage in Los Angeles echoes across the Atlantic and strikes a chord in angry May Day protests. Two countries, related issues, racial and ethnic tension amid economic and social uncertainty. They're signs of the times in nations around the globe, and joining me today in our Atlanta studios, an honored guest with special insight into today's events, German President Richard von Weizsacker. Thank you, sir, for coming in. We will talk with him in just a moment, but first, some background. The violence in the streets of Berlin came during traditional May Day celebrations. Leftist demonstrators turned on a group of neo-Nazis. When police tried to intervene, a battle ensued. Some of the demonstrators said they sympathized with the events in Los Angeles. CNN's Doug James takes a look at some of the obstacles in Germany's difficult search for social unity.
Chancellor Helmut Kohl promised no one would lose as a result of reunification. And in the euphoria of the moment, few believed otherwise. But 18 months after the celebrations, Germany is facing a grim reality.
The mood of the people is a mixture of disappointment and lethargy, outrage and despair.
At first glance, Eastern Germany has never looked better, but a facelift alone can't heal the deep scars of communism. After more than 40 years of neglect, people here were led to believe they'd be saved by an economic miracle similar to that which raised Western Germany from the ashes of World War II. But that hasn't happened. By privatizing the few salvageable dinosaurs of state production, Western investors have saved some jobs, but nowhere near enough. With more than 30% unemployed, the former East German state has become a welfare state, with millions of its citizens now solely dependent on handouts from Bonn.
We expect that until the year 2000, the West German taxpayer will pay up to $1 trillion for the economic build-up of East Germany.
The bill has come as an unpleasant shock to affluent West Germans, unprepared and often unwilling to share their good fortune with cousin Heinrich in Halle. This week, shock turned to anger as a wave of industrial unrest swept across Western Germany. For the first time in 18 years, public service workers went on strike, demanding a hefty pay hike to offset what they've had to pay in unity taxes. And a more ominous sign. In two recent state elections, many voters registered dissatisfaction with the status quo by supporting right-wing extremists, including a former member of Hitler's SS.
Jeden Tag kommen 1,000 Asylanten.
Right-wing candidates captured the public mood by pledging to stem the flood of foreigners into Germany, job seekers posing as political refugees, housed and fed at taxpayer expense while their cases are reviewed.
Wir alle sind bedroht durch kriminelle Ausländer.
Not all Germans share the extreme xenophobia displayed in this controversial campaign ad, but many are worried about their economic future.
I don't think that this is going to be a long-term trend in Germany, but I do think that as the social and economic difficulties continue over the next 5 or 10 years, you may see a continued rise in right-wing extremism.
And so now we turn to our distinguished guest, German President Richard von Weizsacker. Thank you, sir, for coming in, as we said.
Thank you for having me.
Obviously, you visited a distressing and disturbing time here in America. We're seeing the uglier side of some of the difficulties and tensions that we face. But as we just saw in the piece from Doug James, and we saw in the pictures from Berlin earlier today, ethnic tensions flaring into violence are happening elsewhere in the world. Difficult time in Germany with widespread strikes and protests. The spark is different. Many of the causes are different. But we're seeing this in Yugoslavia, in Russia, in many places. What are your thoughts? What is happening, do you think, in the world?
I think it's difficult to compare the various places which you just mentioned. In the case of Germany, and to a certain extent also France, Italy, and other Western European countries, we have an enormously growing amount of foreigners coming in for a number of reasons, for civil wars at their home, asylum-seeking people, or just people who come in because we have free movement inside the European community. Now, in my country, we have a very liberal constitution, that is to say, we accept more asylum-seeking people in Germany than the asylum-seeking people in all the other European countries put together. That is quite a large number, and it creates problems for the mayors and for the, especially for the small communities. But generally speaking, I wouldn't say that outside of places like Yugoslavia or some of the newly emerging republics in the former Soviet Union, it's more a feeling that now we are heading for European Union in a very serious way, and some of the peoples ponder whether their national identity is being kept sufficiently alive. It is not a kind of racism in the first place, and I really don't think it's a kind of neo-Nazism. It is rather the fear that you lose what you where you feel to be at home, and there you find a variety of reasons. The rich reasons are afraid of being burdened too much in favor for the poor reasons. You find such things between West and East Germany, between North and South Italy, and so on. So it's not in the first place, I would say, ethnic problems. In Central and Western Europe, it's more a question, the difference between rich and poor, social problems, and that enormous amount of foreigners coming in.
Turning to the United States for a moment, it has been, through these last several years of enormous change in Europe, in many cases held up as the beacon of hope and democracy and social peace, and we see a very different side perhaps now. What are your thoughts on what kind of message this sends across the world? We've seen enormous coverage and attention paid to the developments we've seen in the United States in the last few days.
Well, I think the coverage is a consequence of the feeling how serious you take and we take the need of a peaceful living together. My coming today to Atlanta, which was scheduled, of course, without in the least knowing what would happen in the last days, in my view, gave me a good opportunity to pay respect to a message coming really out of Atlanta, namely what the Martin Luther King Center has been installed for. And they have done a tremendous amount of good, and there's still a tremendous amount to be done. But the message from Atlanta is not violence, it's quite on the contrary, the peaceful social change. And therefore I'm grateful for the opportunity to be just today in Atlanta.
In a speech last December, you quoted the 19th century German poet Heinrich Heine. Mm-hmm. And you quoted him as saying, "An empty stomach knows only the logic of soup and dumplings." What we're seeing in Los Angeles and various other places around the world in terms of ethnic tensions, for different reasons though they may be, is it the logic of dialogue has in fact in some cases broken down? Is it a case of empty stomachs, or is there something deeper, something more than that?
Well, I can certainly not comment on the reasons in the United States, but of course you have in quite some countries in the world movements which fill us with fear, but where we have to find out the reasons. Look, for instance, at the fundamentalism in Algeria. Of course we don't like fundamentalism, and if democracy is going to be built up in Algeria, it's not good having a fundamentalist party making good use of that democratic competition, and once they have the majority, to do away with democracy. But the reason, of course, of that fundamentalism is not an ideology, but simple social need, hunger, unemployment, and all this kind of thing. So we shouldn't start to quarrel too soon about religious problems or ideological problems. We should rather see to it that the causes and the social need of life are being properly observed and taken care of.
You have been eloquent and passionate even about the need for Germans, Eastern and Western, to come to terms with their history. There's some in America who are saying the same lesson needs to be applied in this country now. I wouldn't ask you to comment on what we should do. But in a general sense, I would be interested in your thoughts as to what a nation can and must learn from its past as it looks to deal with problems in its future?
Of course, we can't redo the past. We cannot cope with the past in a different way than to carry responsibility for its consequence. And that, of course, is in the case of my country a specifically important task. Now, if you look at the differences, how the past was treated in West and in East Germany, in East Germany, the communist leaders were brought in by force, by the Soviets, and then they said, we are the communist rulers, we have turned East Germany into a communist country, this is our answer to Nazism, so we have nothing to do with the past anymore. And if there are any questions coming up as to the past, that is up for the West. I think it is very important not to forget, very important to keep with open hearts and open minds the responsibility for the consequences. But of course, for every generation, the world starts anew. And the older people cannot teach anything. They can do as best as possible to give a somewhat proper example.
Mr. President, yesterday in your speech to Congress, you noted, indirectly I suppose, a skepticism in many countries with their institutions and their government, and you said, if I'm quoting you correctly, people's trust is shrinking. What do you mean by that?
Well, I think we have political classes in all our democratic societies.
Why do you think that's happening?
And let me talk not so much about other countries, rather about my own. We have political parties. They are therefore to compete as to find the best solutions for the future. So they are therefore to solve the problems. And sometimes that seems to be human character, to turn the thing round and to use the problems in order to improve the chances for political power of the parties. And of course the public notices that. And so the distance between the voters and the political parties and leaders grows. And the attractivity of the political class in the direction of your generation diminishes. And this I am reploring, really. I think we must see to it that that young people are being attracted and that they really want to participate for some kind of unselfish public service. And that has diminished, unfortunately, I think, in all our democracies in the West.
We hear much about the new Germany and the new Europe. What do you envision as the new Germany's unambiguous role, if there will be one, in this new emerging Europe?
Well, the western part of Germany has become a Western state for the first time in German history. Now, after unification, it seems as if we were offered a new chance of being a nation in the middle of the continent and going it alone. And that is what we absolutely do not want to do. That is to say, after unification, we have become even more European than before. And European means to strengthen the European community, to deepen the ability of acting together in the European community, but at the same time not to deny freedom and liberty and support to the eastern part of Europe. These are our principles and values. And so Germany will be among the first to contribute to a further integration in the European community, the first to remind the whole of the West how important it is to help the reform process in Eastern Europe to be successful. Otherwise, they might be in a danger to lose again democracy and liberty. And for that purpose, we need, or we have the insight of the need of an ongoing Atlantic cooperation and community even more than before. Not in the first place only for security reasons, but after the end of the Cold War, we have to see to it that democratic peace is spreading from the eastern border of Germany right up to the Pacific.
President Richard von Weizsacker, I appreciate your time. We wish you a safe and pleasant trip in Atlanta and throughout the United States.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for joining us. The International Hour will continue after this.
It's 7:45. Let's take a look at the rush hour traffic this morning.
Come on, get up. We're late. Great. After a memo yesterday about being late.
I'll get breakfast.
Breakfast? Are you kidding?
Kellogg's Nutri-Grain bars.
Here.
What's this?
It has real fruit in it. Taste it.
Plus a moist crust made with whole grain and no cholesterol. Kellogg's Nutri-Grain bars can really start your morning off right.
Good, huh?
Yeah. Come on, let's go. We're going to be late.
Calm down. They'll understand.
Honey, I sort of wrote the memo.
Oh.
Kellogg's Nutri-Grain bars. Start your morning off right.
For tires, there's only one name I look up to.
America's #1 name in tires.
And there's one tire store that I trust.
Is now at America's #1 tire store. Goodyear comes to Sears. And right now, selected Goodyear tires are introductory priced.
I got Goodyear tires. I got them backed by Sears. I don't need to hear anything else.
America's #1 tire now at America's #1 tire store.
Who's going to back you better than Sears?
85 copies a minute. 5,000 copies an hour. Remote monitoring. Introducing the high-speed Meta DC 8585. The company that has given 58 years to the cause of making business more productive makes its most sizable contribution ever. Call 1-800-858-META.
Finance.
Style.
Talk. The pros. The cons.
Food. Showbiz.
Weather. The common ground. Sports.
Advice.
CNN. We're the news you need, and much more.
Rodney King will be holding a news conference at 5:15 Eastern Standard Time, and CNN will be carrying it live. That's a Rodney King news conference at 5:15 Eastern Standard Time. Coming up later in the hour on CNN World Report with Relitsa Vasileva, an update on the public worker strikes that are crippling large parts of Germany. And from United Nations TV, the latest on the UN population report that finds the number of people on Earth growing faster than ever. Stay with us.
Real hardwood adds so much warmth and substance to a home that lots of people try to imitate real hardwood. They actually print a picture of wood on plastic, even paper, to fool you. Don't be fooled. Real hardwood glows with beauty and character you can't copy. Beauty to enjoy for generations. Hardwood, our renewable natural resource. For a book of fresh ideas to add genuine hardwood to your home, send $3 to Hardwood, Box 3300, Memphis, Tennessee 38173.
Gas pressure means pain and bloating. And the way doctors see it, your best choice for relief is Mylanta Gas. It has the best medicine for gas.
If you're under a physician's care for high blood pressure, ulcers, or asthma, then your choice of a non-prescription pain reliever is especially important for millions of people like you. The one doctors recommend most is Tylenol.
International Hour continues, followed by Early Prime after this local commercial break. Next on CNN.
Right now at your Earl May Nursery Garden Center, stock up on America's #1 weed killer, Ortho Weed Be Gone. Kill Creeping Charlie, dandelions, henbit, spurge, thistles, and many more. Wipe out more weeds with a name you trust. Ortho Weed Be Gone. It's just $5.99 right now at any Earl May Nursery and Garden Center. But you'd better hurry. At this price, it won't last long. Ortho and Earl May, names you can trust. When it comes to lawn care, Earl May knows.
Both the brown trout and the brook trout of the eastern streams and the...
Isn't there anything else on?
Different people like different things.
This looks good.
Which is why this year at TCI,
This looks good. No.
we're spending over $600 million on cable programming.
No.
Just to make sure there's always something on. Everyone wants to watch.
Oh, hi. Want to see a story about the plastonauts?
At least that's the goal.
Here's one about a robot. You know, a machine that's made for different kinds of jobs.
This is CNN.
Checking our top story on the International Hour, the cost of outrage over the Rodney King verdict is measured in lives and destruction. At least 31 people are dead, and the violence in Los Angeles continues. At least 1,500 people are injured, and it's estimated the damage from fires and looting will run in the hundreds of millions of dollars. A sundown to sunrise curfew has been extended indefinitely. More than 9,000 National Guard troops are activated for duty in the area. 1,000 federal law enforcement officers are being made available. And 4,000 U.S. Army soldiers and Marines are on standby. Civil rights leaders met with President Bush this morning and called on him to press for federal prosecution of the Los Angeles police officers. Mr. Bush will address the nation tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern. CNN will carry his speech live. Now it's time for a look at the day's financial news, and we go to Beverly Shook at the New York Business Desk. Beverly?
Thanks, Hilary. Fears that the civil unrest in Los Angeles could spread to New York are pulling share prices lower. No violence has been reported, but many New York companies are sending their employees home. Right now, the Dow Jones Industrial Average is down almost 22 points at 3337. The Dow had been down 34 points earlier. Trading volume is heavy, 168 million shares traded so far. The 4 other key indices are all lower as well. And some mixed signals on the nation's economy today. Purchasing managers for the nation's major manufacturers were less optimistic about the economy in April. The Purchasing Managers Index fell to 51.3%, down from 54% the month before. But on the upside, construction spending rose 1.6% in March to its highest level in 15 months. And spending in February was stronger than first estimated. Residential spending led the increase. Those economic reports are pushing bond prices higher. The Treasury's 30-year bond is up 12/32 in price. The yield is down to 8% even. And checking the action on other major markets today, in London, shares closed higher. The Financial Times 100 index rose 5.7 points to 2659.8. Overnight in Tokyo, futures linked selling ahead of a long holiday weekend pushed share prices lower. The Nikkei average lost 87 points to close at 17,303. In other news, the number of Americans on food stamps reached a new high in February. The Agriculture Department says 25.4 million people are now enrolled in the program. That is 1 in every 10 Americans. Florida and New Hampshire showing the steepest increases. This marks the 10th time in 12 months that a new record has been set. And that is the latest in business news. We'll be back with another update in 1 hour. I'm Beverly Shook, reporting from the Business Desk in New York.
Thanks, Beverly. When we come back, a people lost the everyday struggle for life in Somalia.
Bay's English Muffins proudly presents a symphony of flavors your family will applaud. Bay's English Muffins. They bring your favorite ingredients into perfect harmony every time. In your grocer's dairy case, Bay's.
Along with the glaciers, a string quartet. There are eagles and old world antiques. Midnight sun, Rosenthal china, the finest service, and the spouting of whales. Surely there is no land on earth more magnificent and wild than Alaska, and no way more civilized to see it than aboard the ships of Holland America, the world's best cruise line.
Of all denture adhesives, only one holds the strongest, and it's just taken a turn for the better. Fix-It-Int's new Easy Twist Cap. It's bigger, it's a snap to open, and it's one more reason to Fix-It-Int and forget it.
I swim, I jog, I love junk food. Sometimes even I get constipation.
Now, X-Lax pills give you 3 choices: regular, extra gentle, or new maximum relief. X-Lax for regular people who sometimes aren't.
Tonight, the terrible aftermath of the Rodney King verdict. What does it say about race relations nationwide? Amid new resentment and suspicion, leaders tackle their toughest question. Tonight on Larry King Live, 9 Eastern on CNN.
And now for a look at what's ahead on Early Prime, here's Cheryl Atkinson. Cheryl?
Hilary, first thing we want to tell you about is Rodney King, who is expected to make a statement shortly to the public and the media. That news conference or statement is set for 5:15 Eastern Time, and we plan to carry that live on CNN. We expect him to, according to his lawyer, call for calm and an end to the rioting that has killed numerous people in Los Angeles. We will also, of course, have the latest from Los Angeles as police and National Guard troops move to retake control of the streets. It's a day also for peaceful demonstrations in some U.S. cities, despite earlier outbreaks of violence. Join Lou Waters and me at the top of the hour for Early Prime. Now back to Hilary.
Thanks, Cheryl. The food situation in Somalia is so bad that sailors on a UN ship carrying food relief to the starving country mutinied. The reason? They feared their safety if they unloaded their much-needed cargo. The people of Somalia are being choked off from food and medicine by a bloody civil war. CNN's Brent Sadler looks at the desperate situation.
Mogadishu has been beyond international.